Welcome to another episode of Threads of Enlightenment. And you guys know how I feel about the guests presenting because they're coming with a couple of things that I deem very expensive. And I am honored that they're here to come and spend it with us. Time. It is a beautiful commodity. And not using it correctly can cost you much. But if you understand the tool of time, life changes. And so, Vinnie, I want to thank you for coming and spending some of that quality stuff with me. The other is your journey. That thing houses pain, beauty, strength, wisdom, tears, all of that. And it is you. And you are here to entrust us with this memory and your journey of how you have created this beautiful creature that is here before us. Thank you, Vinnie, for coming to Threads of Enlightenment.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Man, I wish I didn't have to go through what I went through, but I wouldn't trade in my superpowers for anything. I got to make that very clear. I wish there was an easier way, to get to where I got to, but the journey was worth it. And I really appreciate the energy, out of the top of this.
I believe that you went through it because you could be trusted with the outcome. And because we can be trusted with the outcome, you were picked, man. And so
I appreciate that. I appreciate it. I felt called, so I appreciate that.
You were picked. You picked for it because guess what? A lot of people need your insight, need what you have learned to help them to come out of their situation. Vinnie, you talk to them, tell them all the things that you have created so far. I tell people that when you come through your journey, you give birth to things that resided inside of you. Talk to them about those things that you have given birth to, man.
Oh gosh. Well, I gave birth to, or maybe got a chance to be part of the birthing system.
Yeah.
Right. Because, I had this idea of being a casting director. I didn't know anyone in the industry. Mm-hmm. And long story short, and we'll kind of work backwards later, I think.
Yeah.
But I ended up at MTV for 10 years, where the first 2 years was casting celebrities in films and TV shows. So I got to put Beyoncé in her first solo featured film and brought Mandy more to TV and to MTV, and worked with Ashton Kutcher to change his career trajectory into Osbournes and Newlyweds. you could imagine the era that I was at MTV for about 10 years, launching stars that were far bigger, as you said, far bigger than the network actually that was even launching them. Who knew? And it's the coolest thing now because many of them are still, if not the leading ladies of those networks, NBC, ABC. I can go down the list. CBS, Vanessa, Lachey, CBS. I can go down the list of which I didn't realize I was doing then, because no one ever taught me about legacy. But I can look back and see the legacy that we all created, our shared legacy that we all created in the late 90s, early 2000s. I helped MTV franchise out internationally. Like I was there at a time where as a local network, we were distributing internationally. And then as an international brand, we began to partner with local countries and affiliates to create a localized product, like a local pop culture product. So MTV UK, MTV Desi, MTV Polska, MTV Canada, MTV U, MTV2, MTV Tres, MTV.com. So it wasn't just shows, it was the feeds. It was channels of gigantic output. And I just harbor on this and I worked with the best of the best, by the way. I got to work at MTV at a point in time where no one had an iPhone that can take them live to the world. Yeah. I got to work with every single modern storyteller, creator who wanted access to a live audience. It happened through MTV back then. And I was so lucky to be there. And I knew I was lucky, so I took a lot of opportunity. And there's almost nothing I regret that we did there, by the way. Although I always wish we could have done more. With that being said, I know that I did everything I could have and more. And it was a great journey. Then in 2007, I left and helped Bravo tap into housewives and A&E into celebrities and continue to build talent development departments for networks, talent departments for production companies, casting departments for production companies. I sort of was able to approach it from an operations perspective, more so than a services perspective, which I was really passionate about, helping people figure out how to find people. This is a really valuable skill set that I learned, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
The hard way, because, and we'll get into it, and I'm really alluding to a lot here about my childhood, but like I had to learn how to get people to like me because it didn't happen at first because of what I had going on in my head and in my house, and the story, the version that I carried along everywhere with me was so sort of toxic as a child that I wasn't fun to be around. It wasn't this way. I wasn't smiling all the time, and I was a very different child than I am now as an adult child.
Well, talk to us a little about that, because here at Threads of Enlightenment, what we do, Vinnie, is go back into the journey and begin to deconstruct the life that we live or the individual have lived, and the purpose behind that. Why I do that. I wanted to let people know that we are formed at the young age. Usually there's some things happening within the house that cause us to make one of the first agreements. And I keep telling them, people, that life is a series of agreements. And I call them personal statement of faith. And that when it drops into you, you believe this thing more than anything else. And you will do the necessary steps to achieve it. But it usually starts right there as kids. Something happened and we make this internal stuff. And it might be a couple of seconds, but it governs us for a while. Talk to us about your family life. What was that experience like? How did your parents see you, and how did you see them?
All right. So, I mean, it changed drastically from third grade to fifth grade. So I just want to, so I'll start in the beginning. I think they saw me as a collaborator. I was always playing with my brothers and my sisters. At that point, I'm the oldest of four, ultimately became the oldest of six. A collaborator, a troublemaker, for sure. I could spot trouble. I could spot trouble a mile away, or I could create an instant curious. Super curious. I couldn't wait to take computers apart as we started getting hand-me-downs from churches or YouTube. However I got my hand on a computer, I couldn't VCRs, TV.
Yes.
Unfortunately, I broke things. I tried to work backwards to figure out how things were made. I don't know why.
I'll tell you a secret.
Wasn't around. What's that?
I did the same thing, Vinnie.
Oh, yeah. If you gave me a locomotive... You give me a locomotive train as a kid, I would take those wheels off. I had to figure out the gears and then try to put it back together.
Same here, man. I did the same thing with, I did the same thing with computers. I would break them down, and people would throw away their computers. I'd go pick it up and break it down and learn how to fix it, TVs, all that stuff. And I would give it away to people that needed it, that I thought that would need it. Or someone would say something and I would get it to that person. So I get that. Yeah. Well, so talk to us a little.
I watched so much TV as a kid. I think there was a commercial where, there was like careers that you could have. And it seemed to be like the finite list of careers, for years, I feel like. And at the very tail end of it, it was always TV VCR repair. And I was like, that sounds like I'm going to probably be a TV VCR, repairman. That was like an awesome job for me. Technology. And I was obsessed with creative communication. I learned technology in the early 90s as I'm going through what I'm going through, maybe in my family. So to answer the question, to go back before I jump off into my teens, my parents divorced. There was drugs that happened in my household, and there was an overdose, and I was the child who called my father to come back home and take care of mom, and it was a loud home. In the beginning, everything seemed fine, but I think kind of once drugs entered into the picture for financial reasons, unfortunately, that really just changed everything. And we went from a house of laughter and coloring and art and music to shared TV where we can all be quiet and kind of like be quiet together. Whatever Nikki and Sam, whatever my brother and my sister wanted, I could make happen because that was my job. So like that, this is the beginning part of people pleasing for me, for sure, where I'm happy to put people before me and their goals before me, because I can't fail at my own goals. All I could do is try to help people get theirs. And if I don't want anything, then I'm not setting myself up for disappointment. So I learned to not want anything either. And I really, truly do want best for people. And I actually truly do feel called to even show up for myself sometimes, more so when I know someone's waiting for me or is expecting me, more so than just me showing up, alone. People have always motivated me to show up. But I learned a really valuable lesson in like fifth grade. I had a counselor. I spent time in Al-Anon and Alateen as a child and as a teenager. And I learned that parents, especially, actively recovering addictive parents, whether, they're in it or out of it, will lie. And they don't do it on purpose. They're just sort of wired to be defensive, and they may always have your best interest in mind, but just maybe in that moment, there's a lapse of judgment because of impairment. Yeah. So I grew up knowing that adults didn't have all the answers. And I think that really helped me cope with bullying, cope with the shame that was associated with my sexuality. And in the 90s, how, I kind of felt like I had to decide if I was going to have a career or if I was going to have a family. Like being gay then sort of there weren't the facts that exist now, the laws and facts that exist now that I never thought, to be really blunt, would have ever happened in our lifetime. It just seemed so far away 20, almost 30 years ago. And then therein begins sort of my disdain for lying. I can't stand when I have to lie or white lie, but I hate the pressure of a false fact. I hate setting myself up for failure or disappointment in the future, because I know that's what's going to happen. And there was this one thing that happened when I was in college, actually. And in the 90s, I was curious about, as I said, creative communication, right? Because I couldn't connect with my parents, but I was drawing arts. My sister and I there was this thing in the Staten Island Advance newspaper called Eggers, and it would be an egg, and you had to make a draw on it and then come up with some word with the egg in it. So like Indiana Jones, and Nikki and I made like 15 of them, and we sent them into the newspaper, and we just thought it was fun. And then they did like a whole article about brother and sister duo creating. And we thought that was so cool that I was just babysitting, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And by the way, fast forward to literally this minute, Nikki, my sister, and I still work together, and she produces podcasts for the podcast network that deal with vocabulary that I sought out after because it didn't exist in my life, but I know it needed to be. So I surround myself with words and energy and people. And Nikki is one of those amazing magnets and souls who helps guide and bring that energy to me. So I can do what I think I do best, which is that thing in front of the used car sale thing, that inflatable thing that's waving around that everyone loves. It's encouraging, but the feet are planted firmly on the ground. Don't get me wrong, but the rest of it's flailing in the air, and maybe you think there's rhythm. Every once in a while, you think it's like waving back to you. And that's my energy, and It's like I call it mirror sponge. It's a horrible term, but I soak it all up, and then at the times the power of the sun, I feel like I'm like, whoosh. So I learned to surround myself with the best because as a kid I would get in trouble if I surrounded myself with the worst. So if you're the sum of the 5 people you hang out with. So if that's true, then I'm going to take that fact with me throughout my entire adult life, my creative career. And I've made great friends and hardly any of those friendships have ever ended. If anything, just time and focus and location and kids, family, the thing that happens when you work with people when you're 20 and 19, you see them dating, and then all of a sudden everyone's married, and you don't talk about anything that happened before marriage anymore. So the good thing for me is a lot of that wasn't on Instagram because it's 99, 2007. So that's been the process. I never knew.
But that's a good tool though, Vinnie, to extract in such a volatile situation, to pull out a tool that you understood and you had the insight to that, hey, I need to surround myself with good people. That is a powerful tool to extract from that situation at that age. And I know that tool is going to be one of the threads that will walk with you as you walk through life. Talk to me, Vinnie, as here you are, you and your sister, your collaborator from such a young age, and you guys have done your first major collaboration, and you were seen, and people understood the power of your creative mind together. You are now growing up, you're moving through, you're in college. And in college, there's a certain amount of freedom. You're away in a type of away from the pressure of the house, but you're still not away, but you're away. Talk to me about that newfound freedom and the restrictions that you found within your newfound freedom.
Oh yeah, that's a great question. Well, first off, freshman year, I changed the spelling of my name. I went from Vinnie, Vinny to Vinnie because I found out that if a word ends with IE in French or Italian, it's sort of seen as a feminine, it falls in the feminine pronoun world versus anything that would be like a Y or an I, which would be. So I was like, cool, then this might be my own secret way of like, a wink, wink, getting it out there that I'm not. And by the way, my father's name is Vinnie Potestivo, so I was very sensitive to, having the same exact name as him, especially because Publishers Clearinghouse kept sending him all my Andrew Lloyd Webber discs. I was like, I paid a penny for these. These are mine. I licked the stamp and put a penny in this envelope. This is my best of Andrew Lloyd Webber mix. How very dare you. I changed my name. It was empowering. I got my first email address in 1995. Gigantic. I mean, this is like the beginning of I went to GeoCities. I created a web page. I built a page for myself before I realized that school didn't have a web page. And then we were like, why don't we just build the school's web page? And then I got to build Wagner's. And then, and I found technology. I spent thousands of hours and I got paid. By the way, if you worked in the computer center, it was like $15 an hour. But if you worked in the dorm, like checking people in, like, or normal normal campus jobs, I think were like $8 an hour or some weird student thing like that. So I remember being like, I have a high paying job. I'm gonna clock as many hours as I can because I didn't want to get bullied by people. And I just really love creating space. And I would be the guy on AOL creating chat room, theater for you. And even like I'm a gay guy and I turned to the internet to find connections like M for M NYC rooms and things. Like I was looking for people who were like, and a lot of those people I met then are giant industry leaders now. It's so cool. We laugh about like meeting in AOL rooms in like the early 90s. We were all looking for the same thing. And I don't call us out, but like we were all looking for connection in safe community. In a time and era where it was really hard to make, safe connection. So technology in a big way, had a huge impact. I learned how to T1 landlines and I learned physical structure of networks, intranet, extranet, internet. I became a master in all things Microsoft Word. So it was my job at the computer center to help people with their decks and their term papers. And you might think, well, how does that turn into a life skill? Now I write casting one sheets and show decks and TV series Bibles and all these weird shape forms and documents that you would never expect to be important in the sale and the representation of something creative. But I learned what type of font is more effective, how much spacing do we need, to really master the creative space that needs to represent an idea. And it was that Excel and Access. It was all of those weird Microsoft. My senior year, my life changed. I went to something called the Landmark Forum. Are you familiar with Landmark? No. As an institution, they're in the 70s, some type of deviation of EST, and sometimes if you go down the line further, there's science. There's some weird head stuff that falls into it, whatever. But I took a master class there a weekend. Actually, Robin Quivers was in my class from Howard Stern, who ironically is the only person on television back then that I could relate to. I was like, I want to be her, not the star because he's mean. I want to be the person who's on it. And I got it. And I don't got to be that guy who's being so, whatever that is that you have to do to be that. I don't want to be that. But Robin was like, I got that energy. And in one weekend, I came back to campus and I was mad. I was furious. These people, they're telling me to lie. They're like, if I want to be a casting director, all I have to do is say I'm a casting director. Stop saying I want to be a casting director. Stop. There was this gap. I didn't want to lie anymore about who I am. So I'm not lying about my sexuality in school anymore. I'm certainly not telling people I'm a casting director. I'm not a casting director. I was so mad that was the advice. That I did what I thought anyone would do. And I took out an ad on backstage.com for $20. And I said, I'm a casting director. If you're an actor and you want to have like future work, send me your headshots. 1 Campus Road, student box 5. Like I didn't lie about my address. You know what I mean? I was like, let's go, $20, get it off my get it off my shoulders. And I don't even want that energy anymore. And a week later, I got 500 to 700 submissions sent to school. I felt like Santa Claus in Miracle at 34th Street. With all these like UPS 8x10s. And I freaked out. So I leaned on my technical skills. I went to Excel and Microsoft Access. I created a database. I took the information from their resumes and I put it in an organized chart. I started to look through Backstage, which had free listings then. It still does, by the way. And I would pick certain castings that I thought were good for certain people. And I would say, I have nothing to do with this. I saw this opportunity and it just seemed like maybe this would be right for you. I don't know why. What made me think that was like the step to do it. But that database caught the wind of the producers at Hannity and Combs. Fox News was like maybe 2 years old then. They had this great show, this great, truly 50-50, even though back then in the 90s, there was only 2 sides of the aisle back then. But Hannity and Combs were both equally revered men. There wasn't, now the network is obviously more one way. And the space for people to ask questions that were from 2 different parties, that seemed like a space that I needed to be in. Like, I'm good at getting conflict resolution. I wonder why. I'm good at conflict resolution. I'm good at reimagining what someone may have said versus what they feel in their heart, and they're trying to get out and they don't know the words, and we speak different language, and the nuance and, an apostrophe in a comma can change the entire thought of, a thought. And then it was that experience with that show that caught the eyes of MTV News. And I got to cast the 2000 election. Back then they had this thing called Choose or Lose, and MTV would, like, for the young, 18 to 21-year-old audience that can now vote, understand politics. So I got to cast that. And then when it was time for them to launch their development department, here I was, like the spreadsheet data guy that knew how to like wire VCRs together and edit. I had all these weird technical skills. They didn't need me as a casting director. I worked for like the best, most brilliant man in casting who created the Osbournes and Punk and so many other shows. By the way, I don't even want to derail and go down that rabbit hole, but I was just. Let me ask you a question. That was cool.
Let me ask you a question, Vinnie. While all of this was going, because you're moving and you're accomplishing great things, and you have this innate sense to be able to pivot, if you will, and move and make the adoption and all of the things. Talk to me about how was this young man feeling as an individual while all of this is moving at a pretty intense pace? How did this young man, his inner being, his mind, that part of you, what was happening to you as you began to experience all of that and at the space that you were moving?
Maybe because you're moving so fast, you don't really realize how quickly things are moving. I have to be honest. That's a big phrase. That question was phrased gigantically. I think I have a really tiny answer in a weird way. I felt heard.
Nice.
That's literally it. That's all.
But that's a good thing, though.
I think that's all I felt is that people were, I didn't feel successful. I didn't feel creative. I didn't feel hoopity ha. And I didn't, I was constantly proving myself to myself that I could do things that no one's ever done, by the way, too. So I also went and found the career field where I couldn't be compared to many other people, because in the 90s, there weren't unscripted casting directors walking around, as many as there are now on Instagram, or so it feels.
But there's nothing more powerful, though, Vinnie, than finding your voice, man. And so
I felt heard.
When you find your voice in the sense that you are secure in this and knowing that when I do something, whatever it is that I do, I am heard. I am recognized. And within that space, as you're seeing and drinking the fact that I am recognized, and you began to anchor yourself in that, how did you begin to navigate in that space, and how did you function? And I know from talking before, I know it's at a high level, and because of we have some similarities, it's just easy, that would be an easy space to be in, because as I said, you know how to pivot and how to manage your space. Talk about some of those events and some of those outcomes that you were in the midst of, that when you look back, you go, wow, I was actually there, and this is what happened there.
I mean, every single day. If you give me an iPod from 2004 full of 2004 music, I can go through almost the entire list of artists and tell you what each one individually, maybe even personally, taught me. Like the thing, like literally being in the room when Beyonce is auditioning for her first solo film role. And it's me, her, and Robert Townsend, by the way.
Wow.
And the funniest part of the story is, like, I was so starstruck by Robert Townsend. I mean, like, this is like he's like a real deal. I mean, we're like cable network, that's how I feel. Beyonce is wonderful. And like, it's Matthew's daughter and Solange's older sister and Kelly. They're all downstairs in the studio all the time. So it just felt very, they're artists. And I understood that approach.
He was the man back there, bro.
Oh yeah.
I mean, like that.
From a comedy perspective.
I saw him a couple of times. Yeah. In New York. Yeah.
Oh, in fact, in the audition, Beyonce read the line. There's a scene where Beyonce, in the character Carmen, a hip hopper, Carmen walks into the room. She looks around, like high five, like this. In the real movie, like you'll see, like, she makes eye contact with everybody. Eye contact. She walks into the room and she says a couple of small soldiers. That was the scene that we rehearsed. And I remember, because it was Robert, I was like, oh, this is a shot. Like, I'm going to be a director. Like, I don't know what I'm going to be a director or something. I didn't even know what the job was. A gaffer probably is what. Yeah. I knew what a gaffer was. I thought a gaffer or a Foley artist, I thought, is what I wanted it to be. So she does the line and I kind of move back and I think I'm getting like a great shot, and something happened in there that I didn't realize until I started talking about the story. And I'm going to share with it now. I'll sort of rephrase it for how I see it now. And he gave her a note, but I didn't realize he was giving her the note, because he took my hands and he said, no, I don't need to see if she can act. All I need to see is the eyes. I just want to see her eyes can focus. So I need you to be 6 inches from her face, uncomfortably close. It's probably going to be out of focus. All I'm doing is looking at her eyeballs. I'm in the room with her. I can see that she's acting. I can feel I know she can do it. Yeah. And I remember, like, he would, like, all of that he said to me, and I felt, so I was like almost embarrassed. I was like, I'm so sorry, Beyonce, that I got a note in the middle of your audition. Like, that felt weird. I didn't say that, but like, I remember feeling that way. And when I look back at that moment and I realized what he was doing was getting the outcome, the desired outcome, without asking for it from her. Yeah. That these were two artists that were connecting with each other and talking to and with each other without needing to even talk to and with each other. That by him telling me what his goal was and where I needed to be, gave Beyonce all the cues that she needed to do to keep her eyes focused. And that moment, when I realized how brilliant creative people can be in this weird galaxy, giant world that we live. I think we just pushed an asteroid just a tiny little bit recently, and NASA says, that's what I think I do in this creative world. Just a tiny little push. I'm not going to derail you from what you're doing at all. You'll still, you're still going to hit the same planet you were doomed to hit, but now you're going to land in the ocean, and it's going to be a softer impact and a bigger splash, a more theatrical splash, and let's get a water sponsor. And I don't take that lightly, that I was just in the room as a child, as a kid, learning, being exposed to the decision-making process when choices are presented in the creative process. And I think Sharon Osbourne, I think Ashton Kutcher, I think Mandy, these are big performers, big contributors to media and even digital platforms that we use to connect with each other outside of media. Yeah. And I was aware of that. I think I knew that I saw, and maybe if I got there in 98 and 02, I was like, oh, these stars are like getting these are like they're getting Mandy Moore's in like movies now, and I thought we would be like at MTV as VJs forever.
Yeah.
Hillary is now the star of One Tree Hill. Lala, they all the VJs kind of grew, and it was powerful, and they continued to do it. And not only did they just stay as talent, this is my favorite part, but they all are producers. They all aren't just stars in their projects, but they're owners, participators, and creators. They've made jobs. They've impacted the industry. They've sold more and more episodes of these series than I could have ever imagined, and it's the coolest thing. It's weird to say that's my legacy because it's their work.
Yeah,
but there's my little thumbprint. There's my fingerprint, and it's fun. It's just weird when I go to like the 99-cent aisles in like Walmart, and I'm like, oh man, why do they have to put Jackass season 1 on the 99? My name's on the back of that. That's okay though. That's my cross to bear.
Yeah, but that's a great place to be surrounded by all of that energy, that type of creativeness, which gives you the creative space. I tell people it gives you the opportunity to expand, because within that space, there's no such thing truly as restriction. Restriction in the other industries and stuff like that causes when you get into corporate America, there's restriction, and you can see what it does and the results of that. When you're in a creative space, there is no restriction. And so then the mind can go and wonder and experience things that a lot of guys within that restrictive space don't have it until they get off from work. And then we know what they do because we were right there.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's a great place to grow up, to live, and to experience that. And so here you are, you're moving through. And I know, Vinnie, because again, the energy that one has and the world that they create and the world that they're in, it helps them to manage their life and their surroundings. And we get into this whirlwind, and all of that is normal. So stepping out of that and coming into the, I call it the day of visitation. Talk to me, Vinnie, when you had one day of visitation that made you stop and go, what? Whoa. Where am I going? Because I know I've been there. I've been in that world, man. And that, once you get into that cyclone and you come out once in a while just to peek outside of the cyclone, to see what's happening outside. And then you're back in that cone again. Talk to me of some of those experiences when you were sticking your head out because you're wondering, what else is there that I need to be aware of? What else is there? Because I need to take this to a next level. What's going on with me? Well, talk to me about that.
You hit the nail on the head when you said, about collaborating and expanding space, right? So as long as I have people coming into my studio, into TRL studio, as long as I'm in the same building where I can meet people, new people, I've set myself up for a funnel where I'm constantly going to be in a position where I can call you in a meeting, we can collaborate on an idea and turn that into a show or a segment or a franchise, and constantly over and over again is exactly sort of what. And then there's a part where my department shifted from being a resource department to being a financially solvent department that was creating concepts that were bringing in, hundreds of millions of dollars to the network because of the programming and our access to talent. So that shifted also at the company, which meant now I needed to have more output. I need to have more shows. I need to be doing more and more and more. And there was two things that sort of happened, back to back. One, I had already name dropped Jessica Simpson and Nick Lachey with their newlyweds. And it was really, the show that kind of put, the trifecta of the Osbournes and Punk'd on the map. And one of the things that I was really passionate about was finding another duo of artists that could explain that story, but that didn't look like Jessica and Nick and didn't have the same community and family structure and all the, I don't want to say points of privilege necessarily, because that wasn't what it was about, but it just felt a little too much like they're not like us, even though Chicken Tuna of the Sea was super relatable, but like it just fully wasn't there.
Yeah.
And I did a Newlyweds series, 10 episodes, shot it with Nas and Khalees. And after we had finished, about like 10 months into editing, maybe 8 episodes are locked. We have a set premiere date, and the show was pulled because they wanted to try a different show. And I was like, I really put so much into that series. And I thought getting to bring Nas into reality TV for me, just, I don't know, seemed like a career defining move, perhaps. Maybe the ego in me wanted that to happen more than the actual. I believe that the series didn't air on purpose, and ultimately that relationship didn't stand the test of time. So I'm glad that storytelling mechanism wasn't there. I didn't like the experience of creating something that didn't. That was almost the first time. It's weird to say. Well, it's the first time I was invested in something that I created, that I'd gone through the process of, and then it didn't air. It's kind of like reminded me of why I did. At first, I thought I wanted to be a lawyer as a kid, but then you learn that no matter how great of a lawyer you are, there things still happen that don't go your way. Even if you do everything right, it doesn't go your way. And I was like, I need to get out of. I'm not setting myself up for opinions of if I did a good job or not. Meanwhile, as a casting director, I'm only good if everyone who watches the show loves it. Meanwhile, all y'all audience members didn't hire me, so why am I only successful when you like the show versus when the producer likes the show? But there, and I'm pulling, needs, and I'm looking for signals. And then it was a series with Foxy Brown, and I had a not good experience with Foxy, and I bent over backwards to try to make it happen for her. And it was a very destructive relationship. And, I went above and beyond as a friend and as a colleague. And I thought as a producer, and I missed out on Christmas with my family because she wanted us to shoot a Christmas scene with her family. And then she changed her mind. So she made me and the crew wait outside in our van for like 5 hours while they had Christmas that they invited us to that we couldn't go to. It's weird that I'm saying this, but it sounds so tawdry, but it's the family element that I couldn't get over. And I'm like, there's this thing in my industry called LMNO, leave my name off. Like, I'll do the job, I'll get paid, but leave my name off the credits. And I got a bad taste in my mouth. I thought, what am I doing here with this network that doesn't even let me do Newlyweds? I tried to get a reality show with Katy Perry. They told me that would never work. She would never be a star. I trying to hire Pete Wentz, to host a rock show. And they were like, Vin, Pete Wentz isn't even the lead singer of the band. Maybe you're, edging out. Maybe you don't have and I was like, y'all passed on Project Runway. Y'all let Simple Life go to E. Y'all let, we want to talk about opportunities that I wish we could have, and I felt that's the moment where I realized, yes, I was expanding and I was collabing with people that were coming into the studio, but that's when I realized the industry got bigger.
Yes.
And when I left in 2007, I didn't realize how big the reality, y'all, when you work at MTV, you drink the juice. And as a quote unquote leader in reality TV, everything feels like a spinoff to you. So it's kind of like living in New York, where it's I know where New York is, and then everything else outside of New York is just outside of New York, they say. I don't know where it is, but it's just because y'all come through New York at one point during the deals, and that's what MTV felt like. So that was jarring to me, where and then you do this, you step back and you go, wait, History Channel has unscripted TV, and Bravo was inside the actor studio. I'm like, no, they have what's going on, everybody? And I saw an opportunity for me to not only just get to cast some of those shows and do some of the work myself and sort of lead by example, but to help create the system that was going to do it. I'm from New York. I come from nightlife. Yeah. So the first thing that I thought of when I'm casting a show is you have to create a flyer, a postcard. You have to have a postcard. The same way we would do it on Tuesday nights, Hunka Bunka, here's here it is, or whatever it is. Twilight, come to Twilight, here's
create that buzz.
And then I would not go to bakery, can I put a couple of my postcards on your, and it was such a cool, I didn't realize that no one was doing that, and that that was just the New York mentality of how to, most people did an 8x10 Word document with a little photo on the top, and mine looks like I'll show you, actually. It was fun. I have mine from when I was casting Housewives of New Jersey.
Yeah.
All the inference that, I would kind of put on it. Wendy Williams called me out on her show. She did a whole segment about you see how it says looking for women from Northern New Jersey? She's like, do you know what that means? I was like, good. She's picking up on what I'm putting down, and I didn't have to say it. And that's the art of collaborating. That's being impeccable in your speech and understanding your energy and how to represent a project without words, because words get messed up. It's all about, the energy, and that's really truly what I focus on, even in this talent development where I'm helping people figure out how to take the things they're great at, whether you're good at it or bad. You could be great at being bad in the kitchen, and we can turn that into a book. You know what I mean? In a TV series and a podcast and a speaking tour, and people can relate to that chicken tuna of the sea. So I've done that before. And that's a part that I think I bring levity. I'm really intentionally bringing levity to this world. I think comedy is an amazing form of communication. It allows us to say things that are really hard to say out loud. And sometimes we're afraid to say the truth because the truth sucks. But if we can make it at least funny, it becomes somewhat bearable. And then someone can repeat it. That's the part that I like about comedy, is giving you a way to maybe talk about something or bring something up that you find almost impossible to articulate. But what I try to do is find unique ways to make you stand out, conversation points stand out. And I think that, the more I can be on guest, and the more I get to do this collaborative conversation, the more you become part of my output. My alchemy of output and creative output will always be different, Ken, because of our conversation here. And I really take that, I was going to say with a grain of salt, but that's the other way. I take that seriously. I did that at MTV and it worked.
It's a skill, though. It's a skill. It is a highly developed skill that you can see that the atmosphere that you're in caused you to be that way. And your inner energy level that is you assists you in achieving the outcome with that skewed. And so because you're in there and you're constantly are offered these different perspective within your field. I mean, that's all you guys do. When you're in a creative space, you're tossing different perspective in every single conversation. And someone outside of that, Vinnie, don't do that all that time. They're so caught up in their little world that all they do and the perspective that they have is the one that is playing within their mind 24 hours a day. And so they're not able to dance in a space by which you are all day long tossing all these different perspectives on a specific situation. And I tell people, when you begin to incorporate different perspective, it'll shift you. It will shift everything in you. And once you're shift, that's when all the creative juice starts to come up, because that's when you're now exposing yourself to other energy. And once you incorporate that other energy within you, you are now unstuck, if you will, from that old pattern that you're in. So here you are, you're developing this incredible skills. You pulled out a couple of things that are in your thread right through in your life. And as I mentioned to you earlier, surrounding yourself with people, that thread that you picked up as a young boy is now you're coming and you're learning and you're teaching a master class, because you've been doing and working this thing from 7 years old all the way to where you're at. And as you began to navigate, and that's why I asked you the question, because I knew the corporate boys would come in, because when you're taking something that powerful, they are going to come in. And when you're starting to step outside of the limitation that they have, this field that they have given you to play in. And then when you start going out of that field, that's when they come in and say, wait a minute, we didn't give you permission to go over there and play over there. So I was excited to hear when you had that visitation, because they will come. And so, and when they do come, Vinnie, what happens is they're just being themselves. When it does, the shift begins to happen in you, and I wanted to pinpoint that shift when
That's
it started
a great question.
to happen.
I didn't think of it. By the way, one other thing is that Nick Lachey wanted to start, like, MySpace was just coming out. Nick Lachey wanted to start like a Christian based social network for youth. And I thought I really wanted to be a part of it. I really wanted to be a part of creating that safe space. And because MTV decided not to buy MySpace, and I was part of a weird group of people that got to have input, and I don't even know, I got to have an opinion. I don't even know I had input. But then they said, no, you know, social media now conflicts with MTV. And I'm like, but you won't let me do a social media project. So then also I wanted to do a podcast, and they said no. So in 2006, by the way, I Fat Man Scoop and his then wife, Shonda, were just recording man and wife. And I thought this is a really cool way to learn about sex. Again, from a couple's perspective that didn't look like Dr. Drew Pinsky and Adam Carolla from Loveline, and that I watched, you know, in the 90s, that I thought could be really cool to learn sex from a couple. And a couple that actually does it together, as opposed to two guys that are just that perspective. And that actually worked. So that was the first time I converted a podcast to broadcast, 2006. And then 15, 16, 17 years later, I'm finally technology is where it's at, where this feels normal. Talking to you on a microphone in front of a camera on my computer. I'm not stressed out. My palms aren't sweaty, and they do get sweaty if I feel like I got to perform. I think I never ever did television because I just didn't like the experience, the ownership experience. I'm leaning deeply into podcasting because either I own the content of my podcast that I'm recording, or I've chosen you to be in my life, and you've chosen me to be. We've made two choices so far to be in each other's lives, and then we made another decision to actually show up and collaborate. How could I not trust that space? And I have anxiety. So if I questioned everything that people did, then I would be going crazy. So I have to make sure that I just focus on people. Who, not how. Who is the people that I focus on, and how they get me to where we go is like, that's, you know, our journey. But I really don't look at it as like, I don't see it transactional. I don't see it as a linear step. I don't know if that's head work or ADHD or whatever that is, but it's the filter that helps me, the boundary that helps me create safely, knowing that I've maximized what I could do. I have to push publish. I have to hit send because I can edit forever. And that tomorrow, if I need to do 0.2, you know, if I get a remastering, you know, if Spielberg can do it on ET, then I can do it on Cast. I feel comfortable saying that.
Let's talk a little about this anxiety, because it is rich within that industry. It is rich. I have seen so many people that deal with this. How do you manage that? Because, Vinnie, there's a lot of people outside that are listening that have this issue of anxiety. How do you manage yours? What tools do you use to allow it yet to give the space, but where you're able to manage it to have your day and your things complete? Because we know some people are crippled by it, and some know how to restrict it, if you will, for lack of a better word at this time, but where you are able to control it and still have your assignments that you have put for yourself completed. How do you manage that?
I look at the schedule annually, you know, I identify that we figured out 365 or 66 days, you know, of the year. So why do I have to get everything right every single day? What if today's meant to set up tomorrow? What if I'm supposed to get it wrong today so I can get it better right, you know, tomorrow? Let me answer it this way. When it comes to content and creating, I live in the pre-purpose. I know that I'm going to need to advertise and market. I know I'm going to have to do something with this content that I'm creating. And I'm mindful of all of the places I need to be a month from now, a year from now, 2 years from now, 10 years from now, of what I want the impact of this thing that I'm creating. I live in that space. And I'm probably more present in the future because I'm focused on identifying possible outcomes. But I trust myself in the now. I trust my gut, and I trust the tactile way that I've learned how to create. I trust the muscle memory that I've learned 25 years of creating, how to get into the space that I need to get into. I trust myself with that.
That is powerful, though, Vinny. A lot of people don't do that.
I didn't know how else to do it, but that worked for me.
Yeah. A lot of people don't know the power in trusting themselves. And it is where you have to learn. And again, you have to have this journey where you know who you are, you know your limitation. You have learned to love yourself. You've learned to look at the mirror and laugh. You've learned to roll on the floor and dance and close your eyes and sing it to the top of your voice and just enjoy this thing called life. And
I love that. I felt that version of what you just described in my 40s. I got to be honest. In my 20s, why did I lean in? I trusted myself because everyone else did. To be blunt, I had more trust in them. And if they said they trusted me, then okay. Mm-hmm. So I'm still trusting in you, though. So, like, if you're trusting in me, just remember I'm the one trusting in you first. So, like, if you're still trusting me, then okay. But I said I trust you first. and it worked. I don't know. It's when you give. If you want better results, have more fun creating. If you want more shareable content, have more collaborative content that you're creating. Like for me, there's nothing about growing that has to happen at the end of content. I really tried. I live in pre-purpose. I live in development for a reason. Mm-hmm. You know, if we send a rocket, I need to make sure I'm putting it in the right direction because it's not my job to keep it sustainable. It's my job to keep it in the right direction. It's my job to make sure you know how to keep it.
Yeah. How did you, after all that you have accomplished and you've done much, I was being a little sarcastic that it still take me days. I'm still turning the page on my iPad, reading about what Vinny has done. And so it's just kept going. I'm like, here. So here you are, you've accomplished much. You've learned much. And how did you, Vinny, navigate to this space that you are where you're feeling, as you said, you feel at home, you're comfortable, you know how to navigate this. How did you navigate to it? And how is it, as they say?
Yeah, I built systems. I identified how much time per week I want to record. I put it on my schedule. And if people ask me if I'd like to be a guest on their podcast, I look at the times that I know I want to record. So I have a goal, you have a goal, and let's see if we can make our goal meet in the middle. So first off, it's just an understanding of time management. It's the first way that allowed me to not get crazy in my head about it. And what I realized is that if I have 3 hours a day that I focus on recording succinctly, that I'm not spending 15 minutes in the beginning of each hour trying to get my internet working or getting changed or getting my dogs to be quiet and all the things that it takes for every single recording to be a success, a quote unquote success in my book. Yeah. If I create this space, I can maximize the output. And that was a huge part. Also, finding a podcast discovery network that I vibed with. And Podmatch is a brilliant podcast discovery network for anyone out there.
Yes, it is.
I identify as a podcaster, as a guest and a host. And I think that's what's cool about the word podcaster is that you don't even need to have a podcast to be a podcaster now. That's how advanced we've gotten in this creative communication. And I believe in the system. And I built a really strong system that supports me. I don't have guests on my podcast because my guests are people I've worked with. So since I can't have you on my podcast, what I did is I created ihaveapodcast.com, a platform, a Google verified news platform where I create a featured podcaster article about you. And that has more evergreen, long-standing impact than me simply, retweeting it on my Instagram, on Twitter feed, or putting it on my feed on Instagram or something. So just leaning back and being conscious of how I want to show up, how I can be meaningful, and then building a system that let me do that so that I could show up and be me and do the part that moves the needle, and that I have a system that's able to catch all that stuff and help me with my output.
Guys, everyone that's been listening to this, before us is someone rich in knowledge and a wide range of approach. I love this conversation because he was saturated with all through his life with a different perspective. And when you are in that space, saturated with different perspective, folks, you can trust this guy to look at your situation from all kinds of angles. I want you guys, anyone that needs anything, just call him. I'm going to provide your stuff for you guys to reach Vinnie, man, because as I said, he was saturated in an industry, and his entire life on this planet so far has been in just a basin full of looking at things from a different perspective. And when I've said it before, when you shift your perspective, your world becomes new. It becomes tasting. There's a flavor that takes place that is it's like biting a good juicy fruit where it just drips all through on your face, because it tastes that good, man. Life changes and it tastes good. I want you guys to get in touch with him, get everything that he's ever put together and learn from him. Get in contact with him and learn, because we are here on this planet to learn and to become so effective so that we can then, from different conversation, we can change this world, man. It's time. I want all those guys who are thinking about a podcast, you get in touch with him. Talk to him. Please. He is going to able to walk with you. Anything that you need, that you're thinking of creatively. You want to talk about music, you want to talk about TV, you have someone that houses all of that information. And I want you to inundate him, get on his side, crash it, do whatever you got to do. But I want you to pull from him, because he's here and he has opened himself to you and I so that we can change our life. Vinnie, thank you so much, man, for coming and sharing this precious commodity with me here, man. I love this one.
Thank you, Ken. I appreciate you. We'll have to do another one. We'll do a follow-up. We'll see the results of this episode, okay? I look forward to that. Yeah,
definitely. Cool. All right, man. Go enjoy your life and tell your sister hi, man, because I know she's probably the better mind on this whole thing. I'm sure she centers you, because you're like me. Yeah. We're all over the place. So
she gives me that Vin, that cuts right through Vin, and I'm like, it's not Vincent or Vinnie. I know I'm in trouble.
Yeah, there you go, man. Thank you so much, sir. You have a great one, man.
You too. Right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.